Okay, thank you. Today is March 5th, 2022.
I think it's April.
Sorry, yes, it is. April 5th, 2022. It's 6:02 p.m. We're at the auditorium. This is a workshop for the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we have a little informal agenda, but I believe before we get started, I want to introduce the new commissioner, Bren. I want people to know who you are.
Yes.
This first official gathering, though not to a regular meeting yet, but maybe next time, next 2 weeks, next week, 2 weeks. And then, should we go ahead and introduce our new gardener?
Yes, thank you.
Scott.
I'm pleased to announce that we've recently hired a new gardener. She comes highly qualified and very, very hard worker. Pleased to have her on board. I'm looking forward to the gardens taking shape as we enter the planting season over the next month or so.
Yes,
And
lots to do.
she's got a lot of cleaning up to do in the gardens, and of course we have 3 gardens that are torn up quite a bit that we'll report on here in a moment. But a lot of the work that Steph will be working on in the next month or so is going to be very nice to see that she continues to make progress, because we're a little bit behind as far as starting, just due to the change in personnel. So I'd like to introduce Steph Gordon Glassford. And Steph, if you'd take a moment to introduce yourself. And,
Sure. I'm Steph. I'm the new gardener, and I just moved here. I bought a house here in town. I've been coming to Eureka Springs for many years, though, with my family. I grew up in the Ozarks. You know, my dad has about 300 acres south of here that's just woods and meadows and ridges. It's gorgeous. And so I grew up building, you know, dry stack rock walls and gardening with my mom. And so this is my heart. Like, this is where my home is, and I'm glad I'm back. And so, but I have a degree in environmental science and geology that I never used. I started working in greenhouses in college and never really looked back, and I loved it. I've worked all over the world, New Zealand, Tennessee, Florida, you name it, you know, New Mexico, mostly in Santa Fe and Taos area, though. And so, yeah, I'm hoping to bring something into these gardens. I plant really colorful stuff. I work hard and fast, and I'm hoping that we can get these things in shape really well, really quickly. And we're working on a lot of different things. You know, improving the drip system and just getting some more color in, and just, you know, we've got the infrastructure issues. So we have a lot to do, but I think we're going to get there. And so, yeah, I do have to bring up that, you know, Scott had mentioned, you know, there's been some concerns about what we're going to do after, you know, what to do with these infrastructure issues and some design stuff. And I've had my own concerns about it too. You know, this is a very charming, beautiful, kind of messy, natural place, and I want to retain that. You know, I came here for the authentic. You know, that's why I came here, and I just, yeah. But he's reassured me that from now that we're going to get a garden committee together again, and from now on, no significant changes in the springs are going to be made without input from everyone. The commission, the committee, some townspeople, whoever has an opinion, and we're going to try to keep the dry stack at Harding. And, you know, there are some places to improve, though. We do have to go through and just fix up some places. And Stacy can, you know, hopefully we've got a good team going right now. So yeah, I'm excited. So if we can just get in there and get it done, if you can just, you know, go talk to the deer about not eating my flowers, then that would be great. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so nice to meet you all, and you'll see me out there around. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. And I would like to reiterate something that she said. As you know, I had requested a month ago, I think it was, that we revive a couple of committees, and it wasn't really entertained at the time by the commission. But so the committee that she referenced, I understand, is not a formal committee that's authorized by the commission, although I would still like to address that at some stage. But she is going to be having whether we call it a committee or a support group or friends of the gardens, whatever the semantics are, we definitely need to have a mechanism for communication with the public, so we can let them know what we're doing. We can hear from them what they want, and that is so important. And today was a prime example. I spent probably 80% of my time today dealing with issues that were somebody thought, I suppose, was something that we were doing. It wasn't, and yet once somebody posted it on social media, suddenly we're getting emails and phone calls and whatnot. So it's very important that for those that are interested in the gardens especially, please avail yourself of this opportunity. Steph is very easy to get along with. She's a very hard worker, and she's going to communicate well with what plans are coming up and listen as well. So I encourage those that have concerns about the gardens to find out when those meetings will be. I'm not sure. You haven't scheduled one yet, is that correct? No. Okay. So when it's scheduled, and we'll put that on the website as well. But we'll get it out there. But please attend. I mean, don't just listen to what someone else says on Facebook or some social media. This is your opportunity to hear from Steph exactly what we have planned, and to let us know what you want. So, Steph, I appreciate that you're opening that back up, and it's a mechanism that will facilitate the communication between parks and the public.
Can I add to that, Scott?
Absolutely.
And say, yes, I was also, lots of emails and phone calls today, people asking me questions, just because I don't get on the sites they were referring to. I didn't know they were talking about it first. I said, no, I never heard this before. I don't know where you got this. Our website, the commission, the parks office, Steph, the blog, that should be, even something official should be the source for information. When you hear rumors, and the rumors just compound when they get on social media, and then people believe they're true, and they spread it to someone else, and next thing you know, they're all calling me all day, and you too, and all I can do is keep saying, no, no, no. And if you really want to know, rather than get worried about it, why worry yourself over things like that? Just go straight to where the information should be. And if our website and blog aren't always up to snuff, well, then let us know that too. But that still is the official place to get information here, not rumors you hear other places. And that leads to a lot of wasted time on your part. I think it's a lot of wasted time on your part. You have many, many, many more things to do. At least I'm not a paid employee. I can answer phone calls all day long. It's not taking me away from an office somewhere other than my restaurant. So I think we need to find a better way to communicate, which we all know, but maybe this can help. So that's it.
Thank you.
Well, I would add that I think that we can greatly improve our interactions with the public. I think, for example, right now, all we have is the website and the Trails Facebook page. I suggest that we have a general Parks Commission Facebook page where things can be posted quickly. People don't tend to go to websites much anymore, and we really don't keep information current on the website. I've looked through it several times of late, but I'm really pleased with your look ahead that you give to the commission, and I would suggest that these work prioritization reports that you put together would be well done to post those, and so that the public has direct access to that information.
Well, don't they have it, I guess I thought I heard you say the commission should have its own Facebook page.
I do.
I don't think that's, to me, that's too splintered. I think everything needs to be in one spot. That's where the communication problems can come from. Maybe it needs to be something commission-specific on the parks website, parks things, I don't know.
Well,
we could work on that, though.
But, yeah, we can have some good, long discussions about that.
Okay.
But fundamentally, people do not. Websites are primarily used now for information storage. You know, things like our bylaws, the policy manuals, things of that nature. People go to one of the social media sites. Now, we had a social media site for trails. That's what Sam uses to keep people posted on what's happening. Primarily, it was that was for outreach to the mountain bikers. And it took me a long time to realize that was, I guess, an official Parks Commission site. It was not clear to me at all that that was the case. So I think we need to give considerable thought to our website, and I still will contend that we could have one Facebook page that included Sam's Trails posts and our other more general, like Springs posts, and so on and so forth.
Well, and
Stephen Dickey can help you with that kind of stuff, right?
yes, but it's a matter of time. He's, in fact, he was really just a contract worker for us, doing some more high-end projects that, you know, we can't afford to keep him on. In fact, it's specifically a temporary position at this point.
When we had Christian as a volunteer doing that, it really worked well because it didn't take away from
Right.
Parks employee duties in other ways. We don't have the money to hire a full-time publicist in our office. I know that.
And-
A volunteer would be nice.
Right, and I would remind everyone that we, a little while ago, had posted a job for an administrative person to help, and we didn't get any responses. It's not that we didn't get a good response, we got
None.
no responses. And therefore, I mean, it's one of those things that what other things do we not do? In fact, people might notice, that the commission might notice that some of the things that I've sent out lately, the financial related document or some of the documents for tonight's meeting, some of those were Sunday or 10 o'clock last night. I mean, it's a matter of we need to get somebody that we can have handle those things. We have the website, and I don't disagree that it's, excuse the double negative, but I don't disagree that it needs to be kept updated more. We've got to find somebody that we can have do that sort of thing. And so enough said. If we can find the right
Yeah,
person.
I know that.
I think it's too important to be a volunteer position. I think it is the public face of the Parks Commission. And I think that is something that is deserving of dedicating resources to it. If we don't have it in the budget, then I would suggest that we consider the entire commission discuss it with, I would hope, the decision to create at least a half-time position that's reasonably well paid for somebody who has IT skills. Because the website has, I found many errors on it. It's not easy to navigate. I mean, Christian did a good job with it, but I think its structure is somewhat redundant at this point. So it needs re-engineered.
And it's old now, too.
Well,
They have to be constantly changed.
Right.
And I think you're right. We could work on budgeting that. I mean, I don't know what the city does, or other, it'd be worth investigating. I looked at Batesville Parks and Recreation Department. I looked at Harrison. I was looking at other Parks and Rec departments today and looking at their websites and looking at their ability to communicate with the public and with, you know, who does the communicating? Is it the director? No, they've got well, of course, they're bigger than we are, I realize that. But their websites were much easier to understand, much more comprehensive, but ours is out of date a little bit.
It looks
In-
old. The
technologically.
dangers of going to social media, as you're suggesting, and I've experienced this in business, the danger of starting it is if you don't monitor it constantly, then stuff happens, and I haven't even seen what you're talking about today, but stuff, you've got to monitor it and stay on top of it. But whether it's health or where you want to eat or what's going on in the weather or the road conditions, people go to Facebook 3 times faster than they'll go to a website. I mean, it's proven. So I agree, we need a presence. It's
True.
just when the moment we start that presence, we better know how we're going to monitor it.
Well, a couple of years ago when Christian was doing this and we talked about having a Facebook and he brought the same things up and we even talked to Tim Weaver just for information on, so what are you responsible for versus, a website or an official email? Is this how official would this be if it's just Facebook? And both Christian and Tim, now this would be 4 years ago, 5 years ago, both advised us not to have a Facebook. They said, and Tim said, if you have a Friends of the Park, a 501c3, a citizens group that wants to make a Facebook, that'd be great. And you could communicate with them, but then you wouldn't be actually responsible for every bit of content on there and have to worry about liability and things. Now, whether that's true or not, that's just what he said. But it has made me wonder about Facebook versus things. Would that be you pay someone, I guess. You pay someone to do that.
I would like to point out a couple of things that, first of all, I've got our P&L for the first quarter, our balance sheet for the first quarter, and then I did our P&L for the first quarter side by side with 1/4 of our budget for the year. And so I think it was last night I emailed those to the Finance Committee, so I hope you received yours. Okay, well, I emailed them last night, and just to the Finance Committee, because they usually will approve it before I present it to the Commission. But we have plenty, and first of all, our finances are doing very well. In fact, our total income budgeted for the quarter, or for a quarter of the year, keep in mind the quarters will fluctuate some seasonally and whatnot, but our income projected for a quarter, it was $190,000, and our actual was $269,000. And our expenses were less than expected as well. But we have first of all, for personnel, the admin staff that I'm talking about, if we could just find a person that would be qualified, that's already in the budget. In fact, I'm using somebody right now that's sort of temporary that I'm paying a lot more than we otherwise would if we could find a person who would, who's qualified to do the admin work, who could do at least the updating of a website or Facebook. And then also our professional services, we use just a fraction. In fact, we had 1/4 of our annual budget was $5,750. We actually used more than that, in fact, about double. But professional services in this case was some architectural and engineering type things. So the point is we do have the funds. Our contract labor is available. I'm talking about if we were going to outsource it. But in reality, a good administrative staff with at least the ability to update the websites, that's what we need, is the content. If we update and give a better face to our social media, we may use an expert in websites and social media to do that, to create it, yes, but to update it, no, that's content that we want to do
Could daily deal with.
in-house. So really, what will solve this problem for us will be to find an administrative person that
you're emailing things at 10 o'clock at night and the weekends and things. There's a lot of work that you're doing that should and could be done by that. And then if you find out that you hire someone to do that and it's not enough to, then you get an IT person too. I think that we have grown, Parks has grown. We haven't changed the positions as quickly as we should have to keep up with the work that needs to be done. And if it's in the budget, yeah, we should discuss it.
So that's where we are on that.
Okay.
And I absolutely agree with the comments. In fact, I mean, it will enable us to get ahead of complaints, and it's a whole lot easier to do that than deal with them when they get reach critical mass. So perhaps we'll do some more advertising. We haven't, I think the ad is still on the city website, but maybe we'll post it in some papers, or I don't know. No responses. So
You have a budget thing for newspaper advertising and things like that, or ads, and
yes.
we could just come up with I know we did, looking for directors, we use specific publications. I don't know what you'd use to look for, just the local newspapers. And
I think one thing I'll do, I was talking to Jerry in HR, and he said he has a specific site. I think it was Indeed, but
Okay.
I may be wrong. But it was one of those types of specifically job-related websites that he said seems to get the most responses. It was something like $200 or $300 to put an ad in, so it's probably money well spent. I'll go ahead and do that.
Okay, yeah, you
Maybe
can talk
we
to
can-
Jerry and see if that would help.
That's another issue, which is the people don't look at newspapers anymore for jobs.
Right.
That's true.
They go to Indeed or they go to LinkedIn. So those are the places to post.
So I will talk with Jerry and find
Okay.
out which one specifically it was, and
Sounds like a plan.
so we'll spend a few $100s, but believe me, if we can get the right person, that's money well spent. Shall we move on to?
Let's move on.
Okay, the next item that we wanted to talk about was just to give an update on some of the three big, I'd like to say disasters in the parks right now, parks that are torn up. Harding Springs is one that was, I want people to understand, that wasn't a chosen project. It was imposed upon us when there was a collapse of a culvert. And it's a culvert that Public Works maintains. And so it was a matter of them coming out, fixing the culvert. And there were some delays that we're going to hear about as far as, we don't want to spend a lot of time looking back, but just so people know why it took so long. The contractor who's working on that is going to update us on that, and then also on magnetic. And that magnetic, by the way, is one that, again, materials and a backlog of concrete, I think, was causing problems, and still is. It's still back ordered, and he'll explain all of that. But once that concrete is done, I understand he'll be able to get the stonework done. We've had issues like people thinking that the concrete that's there for the basins is what that's going to look like. No, that's structure. Stone walls are going to be put in front of that, as part of it. And Stacy will talk about all of that. But that can't be done until the surface area has the concrete poured. And so he's waiting. So I see he's already made his way to the microphone. The third one that I'll talk about after he's done would be Crescent. And that's actually in an engineer's hands. So I'd ask Stacy Mahern to please address for the commission and for the public what is going on. Let's first do Harding Springs and then Magnetic, if you will.
Sure. I'm Stacy Lee Mahern II of Stacy Lee Stonework, or Stacy Stonework. On Harding Spring, I was asked by Dwayne Allen at first to look at fixing what had gone wrong under there. And like many of our springs in town, there's a feature below it. We're all elevated, and half of this side of Spring Street all the way around is actually 10 or 12 feet above our bluff, so there's hollow spaces, and a lot of people don't realize that. But down there is a big 5-foot wide, 5-foot tall hollow space going completely underneath the spring, and it goes at an angle through the spring itself. And so you can tell half of it from Spring Street up is still all original stonework and stone walls on the side of this causeway for water and a stone cap still. And then halfway up where something happened, and I think it was the tree that was let grown on the bluff there, crumbled something there. Well, that had already broken beforehand, because what I found in the broken spot was 1950s concrete that was doing the capping on top of the historic stone walls. So the tree kind of just crumbled that at this point. And so at this point, now I've got that opened up. I've re-poured concrete, with an engineer's saying how they said to do, how much steel, concrete in that to pour a cap back on there. Now I'm trying to get the tree out of said thing, out of the bluff, to put a small deck, which used to be there, that was covered with dirt that you couldn't even see before.
Stacy, I'm sorry, just to stop you for a moment, so I
Yes.
don't have 20 phone calls tomorrow. You're not saying you're going to be cutting down another tree, correct?
No, there's a
Okay.
stump that just sitting there.
Okay.
I'm sorry. There's
you.
a stump that's already been cut that I think was the cause, it's just my opinion, of the whole problem that caused it to fall and to cause Dwayne Allen to be called, to cause me to be called.
Thank you, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. So now at this point, I met with Scott and Bushberry today, and just to refine, because I wasn't there when it went down, and I'm to exactly what they needed to be put back there today. So at first, it was the structural part, like underneath, that you have to do for the city and with engineers and stuff. And then after that, I go to, okay, now I have to go through a historic commission and all these other layers. And so there's where we are in those layers. On Harding Spring, there's other problems that I'm able, because as a historic stonemason like I am, it's mostly investigative. And you can't see what's there until you investigate it. So at these moments, it's good for me to speak with Scott and Dwayne and try to get a concert going, because these are the times that we get to look at the true problems of what's going on up there. And it's not about really, most of it isn't about the topical layer of the flower beds and the dirt, unless they are added on throughout time in the 80s, right? To create enough things to create this problem that we're not quite seeing correctly, unless you see through the whole thing, And so that's where I'm at on that.
So can you tell us an approximation of when you will have that completed, so our gardener can get back in there and,
Yeah, by the end of next week.
Next
Or this week. By the end of this week.
okay, the end of this week?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And on magnetic now, so as Scott has said, you could probably all know where in the process I am at that. The basins are poured, all uniformed, all one pour, it's all connected to the bluff. All the plumbing is working fine. All the new plumbing for the engineering that I did there is working great. At this point, I was trying to get the floor poured inside underneath the gazebo basin part, so that I'm able to put the rocks, stack the stone on top of that. But just in this hurry and this press that I've been getting, I've put in more time to pour foundations around that just for stonework, just to keep this going and waiting on the pump truck. Today, again, I've called the concrete company and 3 pump truck companies. I've got them both now, and I was very profound with the owner of the concrete company, the owner. And I'm like, the city, this and that, and he understands. So now I've got a pump truck that is able to do me a favor. The concrete company that's trying to come on Thursday now is to get my guys in there, the concrete guys in there. Now this whole time with all of this weather that we've been having, I have to keep everybody busy somehow, right? I can't just sit there and wait at magnetic the whole time. So once again, hopefully let's keep our fingers crossed. that I can pull enough guys away from enough jobs to get there to do the stamped concrete on Thursday. If not, it'll be the next week. They said Monday or Tuesday. Everybody's open Monday or Tuesday, but it rains Monday or Tuesday. That's the way it's been every single week, is some weather, inclement weather, keeps on kind of throwing a wrench in our thing. And that's why it's kind of taken so long. It shouldn't have taken that long, but it is a eureka job in the middle of winter that isn't the best job to do in the winter. That job would be best to do in the deep of summer when there's less water out of that spring, because that controls my work. And I've been successfully controlling the main flow of water that comes out of there that feeds that spring. But what really happens is the mountain bleeds, and it just bleeds and bleeds to where even the side stonework becomes kind of impossible to do for 2 or 3 days after a big rain, because the mountain is just still bleeding out. And so that really does take this time. And so I know I've been trying to do it in the winter, which is good for tourism, but not great for stonework. So I'm happy and I'm glad for the patience of everybody in the society, in the community and with you guys. But I feel like, and I hope you guys feel like, that it is getting done in a much, much better fashion than what was there before. It will be it will last a lot longer than it did before.
Thank you. So what's a time frame for total completion that you can estimate?
End of the month.
End of this month, end of April.
Correct.
Okay.
With all the bells and whistles.
Thank you. Now, another question or two that just because these are questions I've heard, I know the answers to, but the stonework is, when a permit was applied, it was stated that the stone would be similar to what had been out there. People are saying, well, the color is so much different than what's there. Would you just explain for the public
The color?
what the color and is the stone eventually going to look similar to what was there?
Yes, and it will. And all of our whole town is made out of pretty much the same one quarry. Mm-hmm. And that's the same quarry that I am buying stone from. It is the fact that it is newer, that it's just white when it comes out. The other difference is for many, many 100 years, the quarry was this growing process. And when you're building a quarry, you'll reach these layers at the top that have all this loose excrement stone, say people call it field stone or what have you. And so at certain parts in the life of our quarry, it has shut down for 50 years and opened back up. People were able to go in and buy said field stone that was just on the top in the quarry, that was already looking kind of aged because it sat there on the top of the quarry for many years. At this point, you cannot buy that stone. The quarry is expanding faster than Eureka almost, because, they got bought by a bigger company. So at this point, what we're kind of stuck with is this white stone. And not only that, now they mass produce it for other things, right? And so they won't go and make you a thin stone or a random stone that's structural still. They'll make you one for a veneer of a house that has no depth. So what I'm kind of stuck with doing with Eureka Springs Historic Committee is having to buy this stone, having to use the shape and size that I tell them, because I can't get the small stuff. So I usually, just like all the historic photos in town, try to get big cubical stones, because that is the historical way our town was built. It didn't have all these little bitty stones and dry stacked everywhere that it does now. And that came throughout just repairs, because even there, amazing stonework by springs and by water doesn't last forever. But you want to use what will last the longest in this situation. And that, I would say, is usually a more monolithic stone. That's a stone that will sit there by itself and not be pushed over by children or kicked off by a deer, or, you know, there's all these rhymes and reasons why a Disney castle looks like a Disney castle, and it isn't because of the architect wanted it to look like a Disney castle, is because of structure. So structure, beauty follows structure in many ways, you know, in those ways. The arch, that is so beautiful, but really what we're seeing is a structure told our eye that's beautiful, you know, to be able to do that. And it's beautiful at the same time. So in many ways, all I'm doing is trying to replicate, as a historic stonemason, I'm not a mason, I'm trying to replicate what they've done. Per said the face value of that needs to be turned back into stone again at the most sustainable, economical way that I've been trained to do by customers, by, you know, Julia Bingham, by Steve Beecham, by all the old commissioners that I've been working for the last 30 years here. You know, it's always, you know, it's not just aesthetics, say. It's the full thing. And the longer I've been here, the more I know and the more I've investigated, because that's all I do for the parks, for the city, for the library, for the historic community, you know, and many, many owners of historic buildings downtown. So I'm usually under their building. I'm looking at the things and I'm fixing them per se to what they need to be on just that one specific site only. You know, so it's this investigation and then an outcome. But it's never my call what the outcome is.
Okay, how long do you think it will take for that stone that looks so bright white and new and fresh? How long will it take for it to develop a patina where it more closely matches what's there?
Well, I think that's, once again, everything is kind of site-specific. And so at Magnetic, I think it's going to happen quite fast. If you look at any pictures in the last 30 years, and that big oak tree, the pin oak tree that's out front shading it really well, and if you notice the travel of the sun through the day and where it gets inside of there, up there by the box spring is very, very little. And so it's a great place to grow color or moss or slick or anything else. And so, but if you're on a southern side, that's going to take longer because that sun's just sitting there baking it and not too much life can live on it to create those lichen and everything else that everybody loves. There's ways to make it speed up, but it really, you know, just time does it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
Anyone has any questions?
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Anything else?
Not for me.
Not for me.
May I ask,
Yes.
for Magnetic,
Yes, ma'am.
did you have a plan in your approach to this? Did you have a plan for the changes that have happened there?
I did. I presented them to you guys, or to Scott, and I presented them to the Historic Committee. I had a plan, and mine was, I was asked to rebuild 2 stone basins and just the stone basins, so I'm the one that said, hey, this is not working in many other ways, and everybody was seeing it as just the basins not working, but really it had a malfunction starting 10 years ago when they put a tin horn through the street and severed on accident because Public Works and the parks weren't talking together. The Public Works severed the park's outgoing drains, you know, just with big machinery, never saw it. And so therefore, and I figured all of that out, that they had severed, and then I promoted the idea to fix that part.
Well, I understand that in circumstances like that, a plan has to be a bit of a living plan.
Correct.
You have to
Most of
respond.
them do in our town.
You have to, yes, you have to respond to the situation that is a little bit fluid.
Correct. It's
like-
investigation first.
Like the terrain. But I'm not certain that the commission ever saw his plan, did we?
I gave it to you.
That was a while ago.
It was a while ago before you were on the
Long ago,
commission.
yeah.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
quite some time ago.
Okay,
Several times we saw it.
thank you.
Thank you. And just that, I think that's all the questions, or not?
That's all I have for Stacy.
But something he said, I want to make sure everyone understands too, is that like the stairs that had to be, first of all, those concrete stairs were they were crumbling, but Stacy had pointed out that the problem that was happening with the water that was overflowing and causing, and a lady had slipped and hurt her head pretty badly.
I remember that.
So it was getting to where it had to be done. But the drain line that went out of those basins went down those steps. That's how they covered it back up. So it was one of those things that the scope of that project just continued to burgeon as we went through it and discovered what was there. It's one of those things that is like peeling an onion.
But note, before I personally got to peel any onion, I had to guess what was under there, and I had to bid. And I'm not, I've lost my butt on this bid, because once again, I'm not allowed, unless there's a giant plan and I want to really impress this part, to dig something up, to have this really necessary investigative process on all of these historic sites, which you're doing with engineers and core samples and everything everywhere else. Without that, you are kind of stabbing in the dark at that point. This one was easy enough. That's uphill, this is downhill. I can manage that, and if I can raise the stairs or lower the stairs a little bit, that's way less hurt on the gardens left and right. So that was this one is easier than all the ones in town on the left side of Spring as you're going up, because all of those are really part of infrastructure that is kind of failing also, that holds up our streets and our sidewalks on that side of town. So this one I was able to predict, I'd say, after going down through so many things around here, with a good guess, what I was going to run into. I still had surprises, but they're all working out great to me,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Educated guesses, that's a good thing.
As to Crescent Spring, as everyone knows, a wall collapsed probably 2 months ago. I was directed to get engineering for that. Engineers are just not available, at least on a short time period right now. So that's been the delay. I did speak with an engineer who actually knows the area real well. He's done some work for us before, Don Johnston, and we're hoping that, in fact, he came out, met with me, indicated that it's a job that he would do, and probably within a couple of weeks at the most, we should be able to have a plan done for that.
Who was it, Scott?
Don Johnston with a T. So at any rate, that's something that we're just waiting for engineering on. We can get that wall repaired, the dry stacked wall. The second thing, though, is the wall that goes along the walkway. You can look, it's out of plumb by quite a bit, about 3 inches and 3.5 feet, which is huge for what should be a horizontal wall, a vertical wall. So he's examining that wall as well, determine which segments of the wall are going to have to be redone. And of course, we'll have a plan then from him, get some bids, and I'll present that to the commission then for approval when the time comes. But we are expecting just a couple of weeks on that. By the way, on that, we also have on the gazebo itself, one of the little moons up at the top has been broken for a couple of years, and there's some rot down at the bottom of one of the posts. I've got a meeting in fact, probably tomorrow, I think, or the next day, with somebody who I think can create those, a woodworker who can create those replacement parts. So there should be, within a couple of months, some significant improvements at Crescent Spring as well.
Didn't Don build that new bridge out at Leatherwood?
He did, yes.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions, or should we move on?
No, next thing.
Okay. Going back to what was the first thing on our list, update on the progress to design, fund, and implement dam repairs. It seems like, again, we've been spinning our wheels for quite some time on that, trying to find design firms that are willing to even touch that one. We did a request for proposals and got nobody who was even responsive to that. So that was unfortunate. We did, however, have some very good progress this past month. First of all, the NRCS came out a second time to look at it. They had instructions from their, they said from the top, so I assume somebody in Washington, to take this project very seriously, directed their engineers to do a thorough assessment. They came out and met with me the second time, and we also went and looked at the plans, the historic plans for the construction of that. They also asked for the plans from the repairs that were done about 12 years ago. McClellan Engineering had done the repairs when there was concerns. I don't know how many people understand this, that we were actually ordered by the state to breach the dam and drain the lake. And these are the repairs that were done about 12 years ago to remedy those situations. So I just got those plans digitally yesterday, as I recall, and sent them off to the engineers at NRCS as well. That then will be provided with an engineering plan on that, and then that will lead us to the proposal for a grant. The repairs could be extensive. They're looking at other possibilities as well, dealing with the extensive sediment that's in the lake that has to be dealt with. The curly pondweed, you might recall we had discussions about a year ago or 6 months at least ago that the right time in the summer, there's so much of that curly pondweed and other invasive aquatic plants that it looks like you could almost walk across it or take the lawnmower and mow it. And that is due to the sediment. You need at least 20 feet of depth to enable the sun to be filtered out to where those plants can't emerge, much less grow to the surface. So that unfortunately is a process that could take 2 years to even know if we would get a grant from them. But when they say that they're directed from the top to come out and do this, those are words that tell me that there's at least some optimism there. Secondly, since we couldn't find a design firm to work on it, the railing that caused the closure of that dam to the public, the mayor actually suggested Nabholz Construction. Excuse me. I've met with them twice now. The first time was somewhat optimistic. The second time they brought a whole crew, including a historic architect, Gary Clements, a stonemason, a historic stonemason, but not just stone, he does restorative concrete as well. Tom Birch at MTS Contracting. I was very impressed with their ability to explain to me the process that they would use to actually do repairs. They're the second to actually, there was another one, Kirk's Excavation. You wonder about it, why would an excavation company be interested? Well, they do a lot of road work, and this railing is very similar to the railing on a lot of our bridges. And so that company does a lot of this type of repair. So we now have two companies that are working on proposals for us. Nabholz I had hoped to have a proposal, at least an initial proposal for tonight, but it didn't happen. They said it would be difficult, but I was still hopeful. I do also have some information from Clements and Associates. They just came in the mail today, by the way, which is why I don't have copies other than the 3 that they sent. But you can see the type of historical work they do, and I can make copies or perhaps scan it as well. We also had a request or excuse me, we also had qualifications from one other firm, the Kirk's Excavation. That brings me to, well, before I go on, does anyone have any questions about that? In summary, though, we now finally have a couple of qualified companies that are giving us proposals. Up until then, people wouldn't even touch it. So to have two people that can come out and explain to me exactly what they would do in a way that makes sense and that has the type of qualifications that you see in their submittal. We're talking stone buildings and whatnot, similar type of crumbling and deterioration that we have at the dam. I'm very pleased that we are heading in this direction. I should also state that once we have this, especially with an architect, if we use the Nabholz group to do this, that will help us to hopefully get one of the historic preservation type grants that are available that we apply for as a city, at least annually. So there would be a couple of grants that may be available, and I'm very optimistic about it. Whereas a month ago, I had zero optimism that we were heading in a direction that, well, in fact, Sue went out with
The first time.
the NRCS group.
First time, yeah.
And did you have a similar kind of lack of optimism?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So suddenly in this month to be, and it's time consuming. I mean, these trips take a full day, and we've gone from not having anyone that would even respond to, I think I've had 5 or 6 of these this month, well, last month alone, and good results. So does anyone have any questions
Yeah,
on?
Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
So we have, there's potential an EPA grant that's going to look at an assessment of the lake.
Yes.
We have the NRCS that's looking at the dam itself and possibly the condition of the lake.
Yes.
And then we have the railing that would need to go on top of the dam that may take a while to assess. So
Yes.
how do you see that all kind of working together?
What you're referring to, I think we'll address more in depth at the next workshop. I've asked Sandy Formica, you might recall she was the one the consultant that in large part is responsible, at least for the NRCS's involvement and for applying for and receiving the grant that you're referring to. She's going to come to our next workshop and explain all the ins and outs of what that grant, I keep pulling away from the mic, I apologize. She's going to come and explain all of that. Because, yeah, we will have to do coordination. We will hopefully at that point have a better feel for what the NRCS might or might not do. So there is some juggling that's going to take place, and we may need to renew her contract because they've done everything that we anticipated and much more. I mean, the involvement of the NRCS, well, like I said, I think your impression was like mine, was when we put in for that grant, she was suggesting some approaches that I think actually Chris Fisher helped, and I remember it was a snow day. I was working out of the house. We had 6 inches of snow going on, but I remember when we were finalizing that, and she had some really good ideas that I really think were instrumental in us making the progress that we've made and then ultimately getting that grant. So.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear Sandy's coming, and I'm
Yes.
looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Do we have to wait until the assessment by the NRCS has been done before we can put a handrail on?
No, especially if we get another grant. If we're going to rely on the NRCS grant to fund it, then we would have to wait. On the other hand, if we can get one of the state historical preservation grants, then we wouldn't need to wait on that. And it might be that the grant money that they might, and we don't know yet that they're willing to fund anything, but it might be we can divert that and focus on another thing. By the way, they asked what 3 things we wanted from them, and then one of them proceeded to tell me the 3 things that he thought. I maybe read more into it, but having him tell me things that he thinks we should be interested in them working with us on, I at least interpret it as things that they had a willingness to help us. But at any rate, it was repairing the railing, surprisingly, the face of the dam, which is purely aesthetic. The structure is in the concrete behind that, and it was an interesting process, but I won't get into that here. But, and then also the possibility of doing the dredging or whatever sort of remedy that would be needed for the silt
Sediment.
issue, the sediment is. So who knows what the outcome will be?
Right.
Even if the top is telling somebody to do something today, that doesn't mean that when there's a change up and, you know, when you're dealing with a bureaucracy, we could have a different person at the top. So we're very hopeful at this time. But with methods in the works for getting us a fix, and knowing that there's at least state money through the historical channels, I'm optimistic, as I said, where I wasn't a month ago. So I do hope that at the next workshop, not only would we have Sandy Formica, but perhaps the folks from Nabholz and Clements and Associates and Tom Birch. One last thing I'll mention about that, well, it's on our list of things to cover, but it's related. Does anyone have any questions?
I've got something about the sediment, and I'm getting into an area that I'm very unfamiliar with, but tried to kayak there the last 2 or 3 years. 3 years ago, kayaking was great. Last year was so overgrown with these plants you're talking about, you couldn't hardly, I mean, we just went other places. I've also spent the last 4 years up here building, and at my home and garage and everything, and when you try to call Kirk's or anybody else to get dirt or fill dirt, it's just like nobody has it. So could this stuff not be used to this dirt that they need to pull out of that lake? Seems like someone would want this stuff to turn around and sell it, because nobody has access to fill dirt or anything else around here.
Yes, absolutely. And you sort of had two issues there. One of them was trying to kayak and not being able to get through the vegetation. Again, the biggest part of the problem is it's called curly pondweed, and forgive me for not knowing the...
But that's because there's so much...
It's
Yes.
caused because of the sediment. It's also an invasive plant that when it got here one of two probable ways. Either somebody boating from an outside location, bringing it in by not cleaning their props or their trailer, or if it had been upstream, it's possible it came down, but we don't see that. We would likely, if that was the case, we would see it at Black Bass Lake.
Right.
And we don't. So in reality, it's something that a guest brought in to us.
Right.
And so the point is, the only way to deal with it, there's two ways to deal with it. One is with an aquatic herbicide, which I just don't see us even considering. Keep in mind, we would be poisoning the water downstream, so that's not even something that I'll put it this way. I will not be bringing that to you as a solution.
No.
So the second way to deal with it is to get rid of the silt and sediment to the point where we can get in excess of 20 feet, so the sun will not be reaching it. So that's the likely course of action. The second issue is about once we remove that sediment. Yeah, I've thought the same thing. And whenever we do this work, again, the study that is going to take place, it's a 2-year process just for this study, which is unfortunate, but it's very comprehensive. But they will identify exactly what steps should be taken to deal with our lake and the stream bed. And the issue of what we're going to do with the sediment is ancillary. Of course, we have to do something with it. Part of the problem that we have there is the solution last time they did it was they built a little island. And so that island had changed the flow of the water and actually, some people say, created more problems. In reality, what I see is behind that island, what it did is it slowed down the flow of the water as it comes in through the creek, caused it to precipitate out back behind that island and created what we have now up there that's sort of a wetland. I think that's a feature that is a benefit, not a detriment. So in reality, the fact that that island caused that problem, in quotes, problem, I'm not necessarily unhappy with. Those wetlands that we have up there are beneficial. But I don't think we want to do that again, create another island.
I'd like to.
I think another major contributor to the growth of the plants in Lake Leatherwood, in addition to the sediment buildup, is the septic system.
Yes.
If you go to Google Earth and look down on that end of the lake during, temperate weather, you can see that that's where you will see streams of those plants with clear evidence of feed from the lake edge, which would be the septic system.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's one of the things that Craft and Toll is assessing as well as part of their site plan out at Leatherwood is the very likelihood that we're going to have to redo the septic system. So that is being assessed.
Well, I would suggest that it's most likely that you have to replace the septic system with
sure.
a system that works.
Yes.
A septic tank with a leach field is always going to have the same problem if you try to fix it.
Yes. Also, the grant that we got for the lake assessment will be assessing those sorts of contributions to the problem of the aquatic invasive vegetation and other issues that we have. So absolutely, that's something that not only will it be assessed by Craft and Toll, who are architects and engineers, they may not have the same knowledge and expertise in the water issues. I do know that they do some environmental engineering, but the point is the lake study that's being done is specifically people who are qualified to assess those sorts of things.
And that is who?
That's the one that Sandy Formica will be.
Okay.
Yes.
Not Craft and Toll.
No.
No, the lake study.
Anything else on those issues? And by the way, this isn't an agenda that we have to follow, so I mean, we've got more I'd like to present, but if we get to the point you're ready for me to pull the plug, please say so.
Okay.
Well, I would like to suggest that we do agree on a time limit here.
Good idea. It is 7:05 at this point.
Maybe
Do we
another.
want to go 25 more minutes till
Yeah, that
7:30?
sounds good. I think 7:30.
I had suggested a discussion of the master plan process, but it actually would be good to have Kevin here, so if you want to delay that a month, that's fine.
Okay. Well, let me just address that in 5 minutes to describe what I would like to see at this point.
Are you talking about item 5?
Yes.
I had actually requested that be on the agenda.
Pardon?
I had requested that be on the agenda.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm not sure what you're...
Oh, because you said you were going to address it.
Oh, so you wanted to discuss it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where it came from. I had made that request. Yeah.
You did, but either one of you can discuss it because it's not really an agenda, so, yeah, go ahead. Tell us what you...
Okay, so you want to go ahead and do it now?
Oh, you said you wanted to wait till Kevin was here to have a full discussion.
Yeah, okay.
Scott said he wanted to briefly say something about it from his point of view, but we can do both.
And then you or if you want to go first, all I wanted to say, I'm sorry, is just...
I was just trying to make time for your item 2, that's all. So.
All I wanted to say about this is that I think next time around, we need to define the process, which is why it's on the agenda like that. And I had talked about that's what we need at this point. We're doing a lot of assessment, and I think we need to talk about a process that will focus and streamline it. And if you want to take it from there, just to define what we'll talk about next week.
We were looking at limiting the agenda, and I said I'd rather have Kevin here.
Okay.
So I'm trying to
Okay,
Give you time to talk about the trails.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Unless anybody else wants to talk about master plan tonight, we can save that for another time.
Yeah.
All right, so we will talk about some work on trail issues. I actually have spent a lot of time out on the trails lately looking at both the issues with the downhill trails and specifically how they interface or should interface with our other mixed-use trails. One of the biggest issues, I think, is that as Miners Rock Loop comes across, they were traversed by downhill trails and essentially made portions of Miners Rock Loop unusable, or at least many people have the perception that it's not a safe use, and I'm one of those. We actually looked at ways to deal with that and actually met with the people at the Walton Family Foundation who came out, and they understand the issues too and would like to see some resolutions. So I've asked Sam Dudley to prepare, and I'm sorry, Sam, for those of you who don't know, is our trails coordinator, to put together some sort of a proposal that would include dealing with that issue, some sort of flyovers, for instance, from the downhill trails where they're not crossing, they're crossing over rather than crossing Miners Rock Loop. So that would be one thing that we look at. Also, as all those trails converge down at the bottom and take you through the tunnel, different ways to deal with that. Some of the signage issues, I understand there's still, we've done a lot of work on signs, getting new signs in place, and we understand there are still some of the, like, share the trail signs. Somebody has suggested that coming off the bridge that goes over the creek, we could use something to prevent people from just going across that bridge and not being courteous enough to slow down and look that people might be coming. So appropriate yield or other types of signage to deal with that type of thing. Sue and Sharon Roberts and I had hiked down on a couple of trails to look at some issues as well. I don't want to get into those, but this plan will include addressing some issues that we decided needed to be dealt with there. And one last thing, it's also related to the dam, though, is whether or not as an interim measure, because it could be 2 or 3 years before that dam railing is fixed, do we bring a trail down below the dam and have a bridge across there so we can reopen the Beecham Trail down across the dam area. Now, we had some meetings, so is there anything else that you want to address? If I have covered them all, or?
No, I just wanted to make sure you got a chance to do it.
Oh, okay. So the point there is that we know there's a problem. We've been looking into it. Sam is working on putting a written proposal together, and I would expect it by the next workshop so he can come and present it and explain what our options are to try to make these issues better. We acknowledge there's some issues. Do we have any questions on any of those?
No, sounds good. I'm glad Sam's going to do that. Because there are multiple issues in that one little paragraph of all those, so many things that need to be dealt with in that issue, so that's good.
Okay, with 19 minutes left, I think we can probably finish very quickly. Did you have something?
Well, you had your item 3 on the engineering basin park.
Yes.
That's what you're going to do.
Yes, so architectural and engineering for our basin park, there are 2 key issues there. The first is the band shell itself that really needs to be totally rebuilt. I won't get into all the reasons, but just in short, there's enough decay. There's water issues there that are causing rot, and those water issues have to be dealt with first. But as part of that, we're looking at a complete design. I did send all of you 2 proposals from Terry Burris, This is an architect that Mayor Barry actually had recommended, and put a call into him, and he's very interested. He gave us two proposals. One was for the design of the band shell. In fact, it would be completing an as-built survey of the existing construction, reviewing our structural concerns, looking at some of the historical issues, and then designing a new design. So that is in the range of $6,500 to $7,500. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. $7,500 to $8,500. I asked that this be broken into two estimates because, first of all, I did send this one for the band shell to CAPC to see if we could get some input from them. It's predominantly used for events that they schedule, so we want to get their input. And then the second one is designing the rest of the park, the layout of the park. And I don't need to go into those issues that need to be addressed. You're all in those
Yeah, we've
on
done
that
this.
park on a regular basis.
Yeah. Does this cover the underlying design issues with the drainage below?
No, it does not. First of all, I'd like to ask, did you all receive this? Because I was,
Yeah, I
I
got
received
yeah,
bids.
yeah.
These are
This is just-
these are just for the architectural.
this is just for the architect.
And the band, oh,
Yes.
and the band shell was.
So when we're so is it to build the band shell or just the design of the band shell?
Yeah, just the design.
That's what I thought.
Trust me, we will not build that.
No,
for
I knew that.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure. So are they considering, as we're doing this, I realize this town doesn't always like change, but for music with instruments, things are different now with instruments and sound systems than
Yes.
they were when that was designed. So are they looking at the aesthetics, the acoustics of what they're building so that maybe it's almost just like it used to be, but there's better ways to design it to get better acoustics out of it? I mean, are they even considering that type of stuff? Or
Yes, they'll look at all of that. In fact, some of the things that I told them to focus on is, first of all, of course, we have to deal with the water issue and not allow water, just because we have a heavy rain, to be pouring down through the building, which causes degradation. So that, of course, is one issue. The next one is historical. This is something, and that'll get into the master plan process, et cetera, but we'll deal with that next time. But who's going to be involved in this decision-making process?
Right.
Obviously, the public has to be involved. CAPC, I think, has to be involved. Kylie at City Hall, of course, is going to be involved for the historical aspect of it. So there has to be some sort of group that will help to define what exactly whatever design professionals are selected will be focusing on. But those are the things that I've looked at also, or asked them to focus on. There's some safety issues, things like railings that need to be done. People are now able to access that area, climb up to the top of the roof, all of those sorts of issues that really need to be addressed. So all of those are things that they will have to deal with, which means they will have to include certainly more than one meeting with whatever group is going to be responsible for directing.
when I look at the purpose of that building, it would be like building a new sanctuary or a performance hall, and then going and talking to sound people afterwards, and they need to be part of it right in the very beginning, so it's designed most effectively for what the whole purpose of it is.
Yes. No, I agree 100% on
point.
that. So the next thing I hope you all got as well is Mr. Burris did provide his qualifications as well. The next thing, though, is I was so impressed when I met with the Nabholz group that we came and looked at this as well. Gary Clements, again, you can look at the different types of projects that his firm has done, and they're very impressive. And these are, I shouldn't say all, but most of these are historical type preservations. So he has his firm has the ability to modernize a facility by, or in a manner that also maintains the historical nature of it. And so I'm just pleased that, here again, after having such difficulties to find design professionals that would even respond, that we have now two very promising ones. So at this point, we do have a proposal from Burris for both the band shell and the design of the plaza itself, and we hopefully soon will have one from Clemens, and whether he'll do it in conjunction with Nabholz and his group, I'm not sure yet, but I had hoped to have something today, at least preliminary, but that was asking a bit much. It didn't happen. It was just late last week that I met with them, and even though I begged and pleaded, I didn't get it today. The last thing I think is, and it answers a question of yours, so that's architectural. The engineering. This is the thing we've been waiting for a year now. You might recall we did a request for proposals. The firm that came out on top was McClelland Consulting Engineers. I hope you all got the proposal that I just received, I think yesterday, from them. You might wonder, you look at that and say, well, it doesn't look like a typical contract, it's only a few pages, et cetera. This is actually an addendum to, we have, as a city, we have a pre-negotiated master contract with McClelland Engineering. What that means is that they can do engineering work throughout the city, and we just do an addendum to define the scope of the work. So it was a pre-negotiated contract and pre-qualification of them, et cetera. And so in reality, when we get into a situation like this where we hire them for a specific program or design job, we have them just issue more or less a scope of work is what this is. So that's why you're not seeing all the boilerplate that you would typically see in a contract like this. So this is something that I hope that Ruth would agree we would put on the agenda for approval or not at our next meeting in 2 weeks because we need to get that started. That engineering, and for those of you that don't know or don't recall, the big problem there, this all started out when we got a grant to do the stonework underneath the fountain because it's collapsing. Well, just like what happened at Harding Spring, it's because one of those culverts collapsed. Ironically, McClelland Engineering did some work there 10 years ago, and they identified that, they said, in 10 years or more, this will likely fail, and it did. So ironically, they're the ones then that are likely to come to our rescue and design a solution. So I would like to get this on the proposal or on the agenda for our next regular meeting in 2 weeks, and everyone should have this. And if not, let me know.
When did you send it?
It was just...
Last night.
Oh, last night?
Last night or this morning, I got it.
Last night, yeah, I mean, it was a late night, so it was... And by the way, you indicated you hadn't gotten these financial statements either. I sent...
I didn't see them.
Okay, it was last night. If you didn't get them, then call me and I'll resend them. So
You might have used my old email.
I double-checked to make sure I didn't.
Okay.
I used an old email address once, and I made sure I didn't this time. So, any questions?
Yeah, so the engineering, this is basically the design to how to deal with the structural issues.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we don't end up with this problem again.
Yeah.
And the architects will deal with issues like the design. Do we have these planters there, or do we want to remove those planters? Do we want the doughboy where he is, or do we move him so he's not blocking the show? What are we going to do as far as railings or other safety items for along the edge of the park? That's all the architectural stuff, but the engineering will enable us to do that work without it collapsing on us again.
So this may be
Fran.
back to where we started this evening, but I know in this town, if there's a lack of information, the rumors start.
Yes.
So how do we go about addressing this process and letting people know where we are and what's planned and what the different stages are? And how do we let people have input so they have some say on how the finished product looks?
Okay, two to three ways we will do that. First of all, we just decided to defer till the next meeting. I think we need to define this master planning process, and so once we do that, I think that'll be a big part of that, because whatever that process is, it will involve the communication with the public. And so I do believe that now's the time to start that, to create the committee that's necessary to facilitate that communication. So that's number one. We'll address that in more detail later. Secondly, or as you said, that we've come full circle, we've got to get an administrative person that can do these things, period. Because, I mean, we just don't have the staffing or the time. We just don't have the time with the staff we have. It's, I can't begin to tell you how backed up we are on our work load right now. And to have a position like that we haven't been able to fill is disconcerting, because then it leaves me or another employee who should be doing other things up late at night typing up letters or contracts. I mean, before coming here, I was proofreading a contract that I had drafted, and it's not good to proof your own work. I mean, simple things even like that. So the point is, a person, an administrative staff member who can deal with those sorts of things. I've talked with, she's gone now, I talked with Steph today, for instance, about starting to put together some things about what's going on in the gardens, week, 2 weeks, a month before they happen, so that we can get them on our website, on Facebook, on our blog, or wherever. And so she's going to start doing that. But here again, and an administrative person then would be responsible for getting it on there. But for the other routine stuff, you know, why did we cut, or before we even do it, why did we take out forsythia at the hairpin turn in front of the, you know, that's something that people have been requesting for quite some time for safety and other reasons. But yes, it would be great if that was before we did it, if we could have had it on a website or on a blog, in a newsletter. We used to do a newsletter before my time. At this point, there literally is not the time in the day for those, you know, there's 2 of us in the office, and we don't have the time. We need to get a person.
Yeah, when you've got 20 people calling to complain about the forsythia being in the way and 20 other people calling to complain about cutting it down.
Cutting it down, exactly.
That's not what you're paid
Right.
to do. That bothers me that you spend so much time dealing with that.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping we can get out ahead. I mean, it takes some initial work to get things going and putting that word out, but hopefully it will cut down on some of those calls that
Be
you'll get.
proactive and
It will,
subjective.
exactly.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, every time, I was talking with somebody on the phone today that had sent in it wasn't a complaint per se about Parks, but it was an issue how Parks was interfacing with other departments. And I was talking to that person about that very thing, that it's this catch-22, that once we have that out there and we're ahead of the complaints, and we'll spend a whole lot less time dealing with the complaints, and everyone will be happier. Maybe not everyone will be 100% happy, but at least they won't be in a situation where they feel like they weren't provided the information. But I would have to say this, and this is important for me to say, that I hear the word transparency over and over again. Well, look at those windows. Those windows, that glass is transparent from both directions. And so I say that because transparency is two ways. None of the things that I've heard any complaints about that we haven't notified people, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do more to notify people,
Right.
but none of those things have not been discussed here in these meetings,
I agree.
and people don't attend, and people don't go to YouTube to look at the meetings. Reporters will report in the newspaper what they feel should be reported.
Scott,
so- yeah.
I'm sorry, but I think people do watch it on YouTube, and they do go back even and look at it again.
Some
And
people-
I think people do try to inform themselves.
Okay,
And that's, I'm sorry, that's
but-
true to a point, but you're
But-
speaking with the people that you are informed with. I see all different types, you do too, you see the different groups. There's lots of people, different groups that you never hear from or see from,
Right.
that are very uninformed.
Well,
But-
let me
And
say
I
this.
try to help them, but
Yeah, let me say this. I have, documented, I can document that at least 3 commissioners have taken the position that if people want to have a say in what Parks is doing, then they should get on the commission. Now, I think that is obstructive. I think it is not helpful. I think we need to do a little internal education on how to, interfacing with the public. If we have commissioners who have that point of view, I mean, that's problematic.
Well, and I've never said that. I mean, I do understand that you all are volunteers.
I've probably said it because I get frustrated sometimes, and maybe someone said out of frustration.
Well-
I don't really believe that all the time. I think that we need more public. I don't want to see Sharon and the same, I mean, I do want to see Sharon, the same people all the time. It's the ones who never seem to attend meetings, who never watch YouTube, because when they give me the feedback, the phone calls, the questions, these aren't the ones that you're used to thinking of. People that call me have completely misinformed ideas and attitudes sometimes. And when I tell them, I know we're bad at it, I'm sorry, yes, that's a separate issue, but what we can do is I can speak to you on the phone, I'm glad you called me, thank you. You can try the parks, you can try the website, you can do the thing, you can attend meetings. And I worry that not enough people do that, and then I feel like that misinformation gets out there and it just festers, and then it affects all of us. And we do get frustrated, and granted, no one should ever say, the only way you can help us to be on this commission. I'm sorry if someone said that, but we shouldn't believe that if we said it.
Right, but if I could just give 2 examples, and I think these are important, because it is a two-way street, okay? Transparency is 2 ways, right? And so the 2 examples that I would like to give are that any of the trails issues, including the bridge, for instance, and what signage we should put in there, we had a trails committee. And all of those sorts of things, we would go there, and Carmen was the appointed person,
Chair of the committee.
yeah, the chair of the committee, thank you, to do that. And she would go prepared to explain all the things that we're, and try to get, but nobody attended.
I know.
All of the things that I've heard, well, you haven't told us this, you haven't told us that, all of those things were prepared to be discussed and get input. So, and those committee meetings are important because that gives us an informal time. The gardener, that, and I had been the gardener and been on that committee, invaluable. I mean, that's the time to be able to find out from the public what they want, and also to let them know what we're doing. So Steph is going to start that up again, and people, if they want to know what's going on, they have to attend. And then the second example would be the deal that, or the issue we were dealing with this morning, where it was just something that was totally untrue, and yet somebody, without checking with us to see if it was true, put it out there on Facebook or wherever it was. I haven't even seen it yet. And that's my point, is that's not transparent either. To hear a rumor and then just put it on public, put it out in the public, that's reckless, and it takes us away from our limited time that we have to deal with, everything we have to deal with. It takes us away from that. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not blaming the public. What I'm saying is, if we put the information out there, and yes, we have to do a better job to put it out there in more ways, and to put it out there sooner. Absolutely. But what I'm saying is, please, there's going to be these committee meetings.
I know, but many people don't have the time to go to be part of the committee. It is our responsibility to make the information publicly accessible. And that would be Facebook and website, but Facebook first and foremost.
And I agree with you, Pat, but I still think there's some personal responsibility that some people need to take when they look up and read information. I felt today was one of hundreds of times I've had this happen to me over the years, maybe been a parks commissioner too long to say that hundreds of years, but still, people get a rumor, then they call me or they text me and say, well, so-and-so told me that so-and-so said that so-and-so said.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you, and I don't mean Sharon. I mean, there's people that do that, and I wish people would, hopefully if we provide more information, it'll help those kind of people to be more responsibility with the kind of information that they ingest.
Yes.
And that they repeat and or
Yes.
get excited about. That's why I'm hoping that that will solve that, because that is a problem. It's a problem.
As you know from public meetings, we've had a lot of public meetings here. And I remember on the SWEPCO issue, people, everybody showed up to make public comments. It was wonderful. But there were many people who were there who were only, they were there to have the opportunity to voice publicly some of their miseries and sadness and dysfunctions. I mean, it was, astonishing, although most people were coming, to give their opinion on the proposal. But you're always going to have people who take every opportunity they find to voice their dissatisfaction with life in general. That's always going to happen.
Too many doing it with parks right now.
When people call you with some dissatisfaction, you can say, go to the website, go to the Facebook page. The information you're questioning is posted there.
I totally agree. I think that in this day and time, the more information you give to people to think about, it creates less time for them to wonder about what's not there. Sure. And so if we're feeding them lots of good information, they may not like all of it, but it gives them something to talk about that you're controlling, instead of, in absence of information, people make up their own stories.
They do.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
And again, I agree. I absolutely agree. We need to get out in front of this, but I'm also saying that let's also not just jump to conclusions. I try to be as responsive as possible, and I think typically respond more than a lot of other people would in this similar situation. So I do what I can, and I absolutely agree. We need to get out ahead of those issues.
Well, I think we're out of time.
Yes, we are.
You're out of time.
But this was a good meeting.
It was, and I'm glad I got to say that out loud, because today was a very frustrating day for people calling and with rumors, and so-and-so said so-and-so said so-and-so. And of course, I want to be helpful and respond nicely. And, my personality, I did, of course. Inside my head, I was thinking, gosh, could you be more responsible for what you read, what you hear? It's not all true. And I don't know. It's just hard. Maybe more information will help, maybe better information, maybe just having an administrative assistant that can answer the phone 10 times a day and help keep, can do that and keep things updated and help those people to become informed.
There we go.
Okay, that's it. We're adjourned we're done at, what time is it, 7:32?
Well, it may be in my email somewhere. So let me check.
7:35. Okay, we're done. Thank you, Ron.